Welcome to Reclaiming Thinking, hosted by Team Metacognition. We talk with innovative educators and leaders, finding creative ways to develop the kind of thinking needed to solve the problems of the future. Each episode will leave you with practical strategies and, we hope, some inspiration you can use today. We're happy you're here.
Welcome, y'all. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Allison Navas. Y'all, we have a very special episode today. I'm like trying to contain my nerd fangirl moment because I have a parasocial relationship with Simply Anna P, where I feel like I know her for a long time, like she's Taylor Swift. And I am so thrilled that she was able to come on the Team Metacognition podcast. Welcome, Anna. We're so happy you're here. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about your business, how you got started. What is Simply Anna P?
Well, thank you so much for that intro. I really appreciate it. I love all of your stuff too. So I love when you can find teachers and educators online that you're like, oh my goodness, I'm fully aligned with this person. Because sometimes, as we all know, or like, anyone listening knows, especially if you've been in the education space, especially as a teacher, sometimes you feel like an island and like no one else like in your particular school or district gets it. And even when you have teacher besties in your building, it's often that like you're with kids all day, which is great, but like you're missing that adult interaction. So I appreciate you and everything you're doing online as well, in the online space and in the real world, in all the places that you find yourself. But yeah, so Simply Anna P, that's just a play on my name. I remember that when I first started this business, my mentor told me or asked me, what do you want to call it? You can use the word teacher in your name. Like usually that's, what's most common. And I thought about it for a while. And I think originally I was going to call myself the watermelon teacher because I had a watermelon themed classroom or something. But I don't know, it just didn't feel like it fit completely. And I told myself, I said, whether I'm inside the classroom, outside the classroom, I'm just me. I can only ever be me. So that's what I wanted the name to be. And I started this business around 4 years ago. I remember I started with just resources. I realized that, I've bought so many things off TPT before, so many things that I've had to redo myself. And then I've also, just always loved creating and writing and like the little bit of razzle dazzle, adding that to the curriculum that was dropped in my lap or that the kids were not finding engaging. And so I was like, you know what, let me take a chance on just making my own, creating my own resources like I'm already doing, and see if they, vibe or resonate with anybody else. And I started like that on TPT, a few resources here. Teachers started asking me questions about how I did XYZ or how I ran this activity or that activity. I met a lot of great, phenomenal people online, and the conversations just grew. And I was like, I want to make this a movement for everything that I've ever believed in and stood for, which is what I believe as a former, English teacher of 10 years in the high school space, like of what I wish and believe that it could and should be. And so I started growing it from just resources to the membership to professional development programs to mentorship spaces. And honestly, that's now where I spend most of my time, like with my mentorship containers with teachers across the nation. And that's honestly my favorite because going right back to what I said in the beginning, oftentimes you feel like an island as a teacher, like you don't have the support, like you just are alone and like no one is there to brainstorm with you or like walk you through wildest dreams or listen to you vent and then like help you move along a positive mindset shift. Because if you've ever been in the like some teachers lounge, it's just like a drain of negativity.
Well,
So I
I
was
say
like,
we created this business so that people
yes.
can have like if your teacher's lounge was not toxic. Okay.
Exactly. So that's
Hang
my
out with
favorite part
us.
of it. I still love to create resources, but I truly just love mentoring other teachers and like being that support system that every teacher deserves. I think that as humans, we all need support. I thoroughly believe in, things like therapy, finding your support system, having that strong group of friends. And I'd like to think that I try to be all that mixed in one for the teachers that I mentor.
Thank you so much. So, you say you have it all over the country. So let me. We have a little global audience. So I'm going to tell them a couple of the things that you said. So for those of y'all who are joining us outside of the U.S., TPT is a website that's called Teachers Pay Teachers. So it's a great place. A lot of U.S. teachers, well, anyone in the world can use it, but you can get one-off resources, some really great stuff. And then, of course, we are going to link all of Anna's socials and all of her resources into the show notes so that y'all can check that out too. So before we dig in to the specific topic of what we're going to share and talk about today, let me just put this into context for our listeners. So a lot of our teachers work in the International Baccalaureate program or the Cambridge program. And, their students tend to, not always, but in general, be pretty high performing students. Sometimes they're struggling with some perfectionism. Sometimes they're struggling with, lots of different things. Like you brought up therapy, so it's really important for us. One thing we found when we've been working with schools is the extent to which teachers can be really explicit in their skill instruction. It's really helping out students if they're in the US, if they're in the UK, if they're all over the world, right? And so what I love when I look at your stuff is it's so explicit. And because you're in the literature field and the literacy field, it really does translate to like any content area, right? So today we'll talk about some of your resources around like literacy stations in particular. You have some beautiful things. I can't wait to hear about it. But before we do that, tell me two things. So you were in the classroom for a long time, and now you're running your teacher business online. For each of those roles, those hats that you have, what is something you cannot do your job without?
Ooh, one thing. Got to narrow that down. Okay, it's gonna sound like two things, but they're interconnected, so it's kind of like one big thing. In fact, I tell this to a lot of the teachers I mentor. It's imagination and perspective, so kind of intertwined. You of course have to have or be willing to be grounded in the fact that life events, occurrences, it's just perspective, and be open to having multiple perspectives, being open to listen to others' perspectives, being open to sharing your own perspective, being brave in that, and with that, or maybe just alongside that, would be imagination. The opportunity to be imaginative when you're in the classroom, to let your students be imaginative. I think that a lot of that's lost, especially when we get to high school. It was interesting you were talking about in the programs that you help teachers in currently, a lot of those students are high performing, I'm assuming college driven, all those things. Especially then is what I find in a lot of high school classrooms and beyond. We almost like rip the imagination out of students after elementary school. And when they're in elementary school, we say dream big. You can be anything. You can be a baker and an astronaut. You can do anything, and everything is possible. And the world is yours. And like have all this fun and play and create and imagine. And then they get to middle school and we cut that in half. And they get to high school and it's gone. And now all of a sudden, like everything has to be rigorous, and rigorous now means that none of that matters anymore. And I think that's mistaken. And I think, especially in today's age of technology, AI, all of these things, like if you're ripping that away from students, especially the ones that you are calling high performers, what exactly are you leaving them with except extended factory settings, like I call it? Like students need the chance to imagine.
Y'all,
Yes.
insert your religious word of choice here. Amen.
They need the opportunities to imagine again, to create, to play, to be open to talking with people of different perspectives, and not just digesting information and regurgitating it on an exam, but like interconnection conversations, like all the things. I think those are two things that I could not do this without, nor when I was in the classroom, nor like now with the teachers I mentor. I believe a lot in leadership and having to be grounded, having to have your own emotional regulation down set and all those things. But I believe in like practicing what you preach. So when I was in the classroom and now, I still like to bust out paper and pen and like create, imagine, like go on walks and like imagine like what could I create that connects to students. If I'm listening to a song, like, how can this connect to students in a way? I think like my most recent post was about two games that I saw recently on TikTok that in my immediate thought was like, how can we make this work for high school kids because they need the fun? And so it's like I'm always trying to connect things back to them and figure out a way to let them be imaginative and playful again.
Mm-hmm. That's like a perfect segue to, and I love that you said students that we're calling that, because I feel like all labels, right,
Yeah.
on all spectrums can be quite problematic. So 100% feel you on that. Preaching to the choir. I love that. Um, the fun part I think is important, because sometimes we get into this like content coverage, right? Like I see you a lot post about like, who cares what your pacing guide says? And I'm like, oh, and our teachers, some of who are in what's called the diploma program, they have this really, you know, content packed. They have 2 years to cover it. They can't cover it.
Yeah.
It's all of the above, right? And so I have in my own practice, and I love your resources for this. Like, I feel like stations sometimes get lost after primary, right? After elementary. But they're such a beautiful way to introduce back in that fun, that movement. And I don't know if this has been your experience. Please tell me about it. But I feel like when you use stations effectively and the students are trained in the procedures, you can actually get a lot of content, maybe more done, because they're focused, right? Because they're moving, they're engaged, they're not just sitting and getting. Talk to me about like if you were mentoring a teacher who hasn't ever used stations in their
Mhm.
classroom, what would be some of the things that you would tell them to think about?
I like to think about it as a structured chaos in a way, depending on how chaotic you're comfy with. And that all goes back to perspective, kind of like being open to, I know you said how, a lot of teachers do have rigid pacing guides and a lot of things that they are told that they need to cover, it's required and all these things. And so, when sometimes some of those teachers come across my page, they're like, girl, what are you talking about? Like, I have to listen to my pacing guide. Like, you're living delusionally. But there's where there's a will, there's a way, right? So if you choose to look at it a certain way, I choose to look at it as, and I'm not speaking per se like any type of experience with the IB program or things like that. I'm assuming that's different, similar to like how AP is very different. However, what I do know is at the end of the day, if you're doing what's best for kids, you're doing what's best for kids, especially like the particular kids in your classroom. So, and with that in mind, I also think of how we already know that admin is giving us impossible tasks with impossible timelines. So why am I forcing myself and then like turning myself into like this huge stress ball and then stressing my students out when I can choose to do what I know is best for the kids in my classroom and still push them to be great because I know they can, but also remember that they're still kids at the end of the day and this is like a blip in their life and they still deserve to have some fun. So what I love most about stations and why I started doing them is because um, a lot of students will read a text and not necessarily connect to it right away, or as they go through the school day, not just your class, I'm thinking bigger now, as they go through a school day of like, 7, 8 hours of things they don't necessarily connect to or care about, like they do need that movement again. I think I recently made a post about how I agree with the cell phone bans, to an extent. Like, sure, get them off the screens because that's like maybe part of the problem right now, but you can't just do that. The other part of that solution, or another part, because there's multiple, parts of those solutions would be getting them up and moving. They need to move again. They're stuck in these desks all day, like they need to move. So Stations does a great job of like mixing movement, mixing creative thinking, mixing critical thinking, because like you said, you can have one of those stations be more on the quote unquote serious side where students are digesting a text, or even like I've had teachers do stations for ACT boot camp, test prep boot camp. Like you can still make these super content heavy based, right? Which is the goal, because we do want them, learning what they need to know, for the future. But at the same time, I always mix in what's called the silly, and that's the second thing I would tell teachers. Like, you want to mix in silly things just for the fun of them, just like kids taking funny pictures of recreating scenes from a class text. Or I literally had students doing like push-ups and squats one time for, just for the fun of it, or they had to do something connected to the text in some way, or like draw a picture, or like go on a scavenger hunt in the classroom, like random things like that. So if I was like, I like things in threes. The three main things I would tell a teacher who's like thinking about doing stations: number one, you want to really think about the time you have for your students, or the in your class period, and how you want to break that up, because you never want to give like too many stations and then students don't have enough time to complete them, and then you're stressed and they're stressed and it's just like chaotic, like overly chaotic. The second thing would be, how can you mix the serious and the silly? You want students to cover some of the content, right? Or review some of the content. These work so great as like review types of activities, but also mix in some of that silly, let them be kids. Like, how can you mix in the game? And the third thing you want to think about is, what do you want them to do at the end of this? Like, what is this for? Is this going to be for a grade? Is it just going to be for a review activity? Is it going to be like an intro to a text? I love intro stations too, before getting students' feet wet into a novel. Like, what is the goal at the end of the day? Not just of the stations as far as like content within it, but overall. Are you trying to get students to collaborate more? Are you going to have smaller groups, larger groups? Like, these are all like things to think about. Again, I like to think big picture. You want to look at it in a big picture type of way, and then you can zoom in on like, okay, these are the things I want based on what the goal is, keeping the end in mind.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, I love a list too. Oh, you have me at a list. I love a three, right? And so I
Yes.
think about like if you're, let's imagine a teacher who's coming to this, perhaps they have like a more of a content instruction background, a direct instruction background, but they're down to try. They want to try, but they need some structure. And I love that you said, okay, first establish the goal of the station itself. Is it to develop the skill of collaboration? Okay, you have this role at the station. You're the note taker, you're the this, you're that, whatever it is, right? So you establish your goal. Then you check the time, right? Because we always think like stations are great and challenging because they take longer than they think they're gonna take, right?
Yeah.
So
There's
right?
like a rule of thumb that's like, no matter what, if you're a teacher, if you think something is going to take 5 minutes, let's say, it's going to take 10. Like, it's always going to
Yes,
be at least double than what you
double
think
it.
it's going to take.
Yes, yes. And okay, so we're gonna say pick your objective. What are you doing the station for? So not just the content objective. Are you developing a particular skill? Okay, cool. And then you're going to double the amount of time you think it's going to take. And then you're going to mix in the silliness. I love that.
Yeah.
And I think if a teacher who perhaps, their personality or their cultural background, depending where they're teaching, maybe there's like, this might be a big stretch for some people, right? And so I think allowing teachers to say, okay, the silliness for you might be, yeah, looking at a funny picture, or you don't have to be as all out there as Anna and I are, right? Like, y'all can do your thing. Picking something that injects just an element of fun, just a smidge, just a little smidgen, a little
Yeah.
smidge of fun. And also, I would say to teachers, just like when they're trying a new writing skill, like the first time it's not going to go great. The 10th time, the kids are going to have it down like a procedure.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, you're speaking my language in so many ways, but like two things, especially that I want to drive home that you said, or that you made me think of was, I do think that oftentimes teachers might have the spark to want to do something different, like stations if they've never done it before, for example, and they feel like they have to do it everything all at once, super large scale. Like, and that's why they shy away from it, or that's why it doesn't work the first time and they're like, never mind, I can't do it. And that's not the case. Like, if you want to run stations, but it's the first time and you might be a little bit on the apprehensive side, like, you don't have to run 6, 10 stations. You can run 3 and that's still stations. Like, and it doesn't have to take the whole class period if you didn't want it to, right? If you have a longer class period, like you can start small. Same thing how you said it can just be a little bit of fun. And oftentimes I think that we have fun confused. Like, fun has to be a party with candy and they're running around the hallways. And like, I mean, I'm all for that too. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, to a kid in a classroom, fun sometimes can be the smallest thing of something different than what we're usually doing. So already, if you've never done stations, you're doing it, that's gonna feel more exciting to a kid. They're just like, oh my God, what are you talking about? Something even so little as, I remember I used to print tests, paper tests on neon colored paper, printer paper, and kids would just get so excited, like, yeah, let me get the pink one. Can I get the green? Like, so excited. Like, are they excited to take the test? No, but it's just like the something different. It's just the something different, and it can be so small. And especially, people working with high school students, you know how they are. This is half of the reason why we love them is because their little attitudes, you know. Half of them are going to act like I'm too cool for this. I'm not doing that, XYZ. But at the end of the day, like if you're willing to be silly and cringy with them and get in front of it, like they're more likely to do it themselves. They'll come around. They might smirk. They're not going to be like, "Yeah, that was awesome," like a middle schooler would, you know, per se, but they'll give you a little smirk at the end of the day. They'll appreciate it, I promise you. You just have to, like, you know that you went in there with intention. You know that you built something out, and I love, to close out with what you said about um the more you do something, the better it will be. I remember the first time I ran a seminar, Socratic seminar, that thing was terrible. Like it was just so bad. It was so bad in so many ways, even to the point of I was taking notes on my laptop about like what the kids were saying so I wouldn't forget, infused with my thoughts on what they were saying because I never meant to share this with them. The whole time my screen was shared. My screen was being shared. The kids could see everything I was writing, including like, that was kind of awkward. I wonder why she's pausing here. Da, 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 da. And like, I wanted to die. They wanted to die because they're seeing what I'm writing about them. And I wanted to die. It was just so bad. It was so bad. But of course, it got better with time, better with time. I always tell the teachers I mentor, something might not work the first time, but
Yeah, it most definitely won't.
yeah, you have to be willing to see it through, to tweak it, to reflect, to refine, to try again and try again and try again. Independent reading is another thing. A lot of teachers give up after 2 weeks of a failed attempt. 2 weeks is nothing. 2 weeks of trying something is nothing. Like we want our students to be so resilient. These kids, 14, 15, 16 years old. Well, what about us? Like we have to be willing to be resilient too. And resiliency means to keep on trying something if we really want to make it happen, even if it didn't work the first time, you know? So just like keeping those things in mind, like it doesn't have to be perfect, but progress can happen if you're willing to keep on trying.
Oof. So like I said, that y'all, when I record, y'all know if you've been on a webinar with me, I'm gonna be like, oh, ooh, ah. So I'm trying very hard to just keep my reactions nonverbal so that whenever the team is editing, they're not like, Navas, I hate you. But y'all are feeling like, oof, y'all, I knew y'all would love Simply Anna P. Okay, so let's recap. And then, a lot of the teachers, when we do trainings in the IB world, they call the skills, that we're talking about, the approaches to learning, right? And so, a lot of the teachers say, I really want the students to be resilient, to be open to failing. And it's like, okay, but are we modeling that? Like your example that you just said about like projecting up, like that was humorous. Y'all talked about it, but you also modeled like failure that was productive.
Embarrassment. Yeah. Apologizing. All the things.
All the things. Oh my God, so fun. And I think, I always joke, like, if people come to a workshop with me twice, they've already seen all my tricks. I'm like, I have 5 tricks, y'all. Like, stations are one of my tricks. I love the Harvard visible thinking routines. I got like 2 more tricks. So if you but you can just repeat the same skills and insert different content or the same procedures. So if you are like, okay, I really want to, implement, you mentioned independent reading. So a lot of our teachers are trying to get the students to read, maybe like peer-reviewed journals. Well, if they're on their computers, they're probably going to just be, feeding it into AI, which sometimes there's a purpose for that. But if you want to like maybe print it on neon paper, like you said, and let them just have a moment, like the first time that they sit with the text and have that competent struggle, they're going to hate it, like, and that's okay. And we can talk about it and be like, all right, y'all, the first time you do this, you're going to hate it.
Yeah.
But you won't die. Like, and then we'll come back and
I
try
used
it
to tell
again.
my students that a lot, like, especially with seminars, for example, like this might be uncomfortable. And if it's uncomfortable, like that's okay. Like you're not strange, weird, bad, a failure if you're uncomfortable. But you have to be willing to sit in the discomfort because without discomfort, we don't grow. So like that is
Ooh,
that is a life
that's a
skill.
quote. We're putting that on a quote card, Simply Anna P.
Yeah, but and then I think especially in today's world, the kids are used to instant gratification. We can't expect anything less from what they desire than what they grow up with, and these skills of learning how to not like something right away and see it through, or not be great at something right away and see it through, that's not built automatically or because you told a kid I told you so, you need to read this. And that's just it. Like, we have to talk to them about these things. And I talk a lot about validating students' emotions, because why wouldn't a teenager who literally has anything at their fingertips whenever they want to use something like AI to do their work? You know what I mean? Like, that's just that it makes sense. So
Yes,
I know
it's
that's getting off
developmentally
topic.
appropriate, we
Yeah.
always say.
Yeah, I
Developmentally
know
appropriate.
it's a little off topic, but I feel like it's all connected at the end of the day. Like, these things, like, we just expect them to know how to navigate all of these issues, or how to be adults, like, automatically at these ages, when the world they're experiencing is very different from what we experienced when we were their age. And I just don't think that's fair. I think they deserve to have their feelings and experiences validated. They deserve for us to talk to them more like real people about what's going on, what we're thinking, before we move them on into different skills.
Girl, I did not expect to be crying on a call about stations, but like, what you said just hit me in the heart. Like, I feel nobody's going to argue that teaching is an easy profession, right? Yeah. And we're, coming off, I say coming off COVID, we're coming off COVID, right? And then we digitize our whole curriculum. And then people are like, just kidding, everything digital now is going to be AI. And we're like, what? Yeah. So we swung back the other way, But when I talk to students, and it sounds like you have a similar experience, like, they're generally awesome and funny and really cool. And like, if we teach them these skills, so we're talking about literacy stations, but we're really talking about resilience, comfort with, being comfortable with discomfort, continuing to move, to try something new, right? Like, there's so many, well, meta skills, going on underneath. But one thing that's cool that you mentioned too is, like, we have to make what's underneath explicit. And I feel like that's the shift that is most crucial today and for the future, because content may be optional completely. Like, I always say, we're in a post-content world, because whatever, but we always will need to break down texts. We will always need to analyze, to evaluate, and to control to regulate ourselves, right? So even just something as simple as moving from one station to another, it's this really safe, contrived, but in a good way, way for them to practice literal self-regulation in this safe environment. And so I think, I just got very, very like, whenever you said that, because I feel like we have really high expectations on students, as we should, but sometimes it's like we expect them to be mind readers. And so if we want them to practice these skills, we need to set them up to practice them on purpose.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I like how you said, like, explicit, even like for stations. I would, before the students would even start the stations for the day, I mean, they would know, like, you're doing stations, these are your groups, yada yada. But I would have them still all sitting on their desks, be at the front of the room, show them what each station that they would attend to would look like, what it expected, literally walk myself to each station in the room and be like, this is the station where da 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 da, and be like, okay, now I'm gonna put the timer on, because I believe in, like, visual timers for everything.
Always a timer.
And when I say go, not before, when I say go, like, but that explicitness, right? Then you're going to move to whatever station, right? And then when that timer goes off, you're going to rotate one to the right. Like, the very explicit nature of the instructions for everything. And, like, a lot of people will say, like, well, they're high school, they should know by now, or have, like, a little bit more common sense. And I'm just like, I'm so tired of, like, people assuming things. Like, I like things when they're very clear as day. So I assume, if I'm going to assume anything, is that they also would like if the instructions were clear as day. And there's nothing wrong or less rigorous in a task if you're just explaining the instructions as clear as you can, or in multiple ways, and having the visuals and, this auditory and, something else. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I remember I worked with a teacher with multilingual learners, and we wanted to run stations, or she wanted to run stations, but she was like, I just don't know about the instructions, but I don't know if I should hand them specifically their own instructions and how they would feel. And I said, no, let's just put the instructions on both English and Spanish. You have both English and Spanish learners in this classroom. The printed out instructions, printed out instructions around the room will be in both English and Spanish. So they don't feel like they have to carry around something on the side. Like it's just there for them. And I just think, again, it's just those little things like, and I love how you said, like, we expect so much of our students, which, yes, to an extent, especially with like what the greatness within them that they can create. I do believe in that and like pushing that boundary. But sometimes we expect them to do more than we're willing to do ourselves, or to be more than we're willing to be ourselves. And like that's the part where it gets kind of a little tricky. And I think like, zooming back out, changing the perspective a little bit and remembering like, okay, wait a minute, this is a 16-year-old kid, because they're still kids. They're like on that cusp, right? They're walking that tightrope so finely, but they're still kids. 16-year-old kid is upset about XYZ, how do I act when I get upset about XYZ, or when like the kids, drive me crazy or run me ragged like on a random Thursday? Like, how do I react? What do I feel like? They could be feeling similar ways, and we should be able to work through that and like have a conversation about that together instead of just going, losing my cool, which does happen because, like you said, teaching is the hardest job in the world. It is the hardest job in the world. And I think it is the hardest job in the world because it is such a human experience. You're working with other people all day. You're trying to regulate their emotions, regulate your own emotions. Like it's a metacognitive experience, like a human experience, and you're doing this all day, every day. And it is that load of not just what you need to do for your job, but the emotional toll, the mental toll, all these things. But I really do think that it holds a mirror up to you. And I've experienced this both in the classroom and now running this business. Like it just holds a mirror up to you and it forces you to look at yourself. And if you're not willing to do that work with yourself, you're going to have a harder time. Like it just is what it is. Like teaching for me became easier when I decided to actually like look in the mirror that was like being held up to me and like decide to make certain changes and adjustments to like life both in and out of the classroom to how I wanted to run things.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna want to talk to you for like 5 hours. So I'm gonna say like one more summary and then I'll go to the rapid fire questions because otherwise I'll be like, oh my god, I'm talking to Simply P for like 12 hours, y'all. I always make the joke when first let me go back and like do a self-reflection, like you said, about when I used to say when I was a baby teacher, they should know how to do this. Now I have the kind of like expertise and emotional distance to say that mostly when I did that, it was because I didn't know how to teach the skill they were lacking. Right. So I make the joke when I'm in a training, I'm just going to stop shoulding on people. Like, let's stop shoulding. Like, shoulding over everyone is not helping. And you know what? Like, maybe great. I'm so glad they don't know how to analyze already because I'm going to teach them how to do it exactly how I want. And so it's like, actually, if I wait and I'm like, oh, should, and I say, you know what, maybe let me just take 12 minutes and do an explicit instruction on how to analyze or how to evaluate in my class, in my content area. And then, oh, boom, they know.
Yes.
Right.
It
But
can be so simple as that.
Just going back to that moment too and giving yourself grace. Teaching is very humbling, and you mentioned that, and it holds a mirror up to you. And the best teachers are usually the most adaptive teachers and those that don't have a big ego about it. Like if a student comes to me and says, hey, Dr. Navas, like that station boo-boo was super disorganized, I'd be like, preach, help a sister out, and I will just make a joke about my own deficit. Like they know that I am like an ADHD squirrel baby, but that I've managed to come up with some things to help me finish degrees, and so I tell them like, yeah, that's something I struggle with. So can y'all talk me through? And then of course they're being metacognitive reflective about the process. Like, okay, what would have been better? So don't be afraid to like let them debrief. What would maybe you do this too, Anna, like let them debrief the skill with you because oh my gosh, so many times like they've come up with way better ways of doing it and they usually have a tech tool that'll help, or they'll have, like you give it a go and then let them reflect with you. And it's like, oh,
yeah, I definitely think reflection, and again, such an important skill for them, uh, letting them reflect on things they're doing in class. Like I know a lot of teachers do a beginning of the year survey, student survey, right? Get to know all the things about your students. And then sometimes they'll do an end of the year survey, but that's a lot of time in between the two, right? So I really like when teachers do end of unit surveys, right? Or reflection, whatever you want to call it. But it's letting students have that reflection time and have that input of like, hey, what did you enjoy the most from this unit? Or what activities would you like to see again? Or like, what did you not like and why? And what would you, add to improve this XYZ next time? Little things like that, like letting them have that insight, not only for themselves to like think about what they like and they don't like, because it's important to learn as humans. I'm 35 and still learning about what I like and don't like, starting them early, but also letting them have like feel like they have an input and a say in like what they're doing in class. And of course, you can't please everybody in any type of career, anything, but you get to like, read to what they're saying, listen to what they're saying, and make intentional shifts in the future and try to like hit as many kids as you can with like, okay, like I will, give you this or give you this or give you this based on like what you told me. And you just, you grow as a teacher every year. I think what's so exciting about back to school season for a lot of teachers is like it's another chance to do it again, right? Like I'm gonna get it right this year. Like this is gonna be the year. And it's so funny because people that are not teachers, that version is like just New Year's Eve, right? Coming up right now, or when we're recording this. I know.
Yes, y'all. Yeah, recording on December 23rd. It'll drop.
So the new year is right around the corner, and everybody gets so excited, like, yes, new year, new me, new vibes, new energy, blah, blah. And like for teachers, that's back to school season. Like, okay, I'm gonna try this unit again this year. I'm gonna do this year. I'm gonna do this year. But you don't have to wait an entire year. I used to love teaching. The last couple of years that I taught was semester long classes. So I would have two back to school seasons in one year. And I was like, yes, it's great because I get to try things twice. I feel like I'm growing at a faster rate. But even more so, what I learned or decided, it's usually just a decision. You don't have to wait till the following school year to, try whatever new thing. You don't have to wait till the next unit. Like you can decide like, all right, this Monday I want to try something new. We're going to try it. And then I'll reflect on it. And then I'll again tweak, refine, try it again, or decide like, I'm not going to try this. I'm going to do something else instead. Like we don't have to wait till the next new year. It is exciting, right? But you don't always have to wait. Like you can try something whenever you feel like you want to try it.
Like I said, I'm just gonna. I don't even know how to wrap it up. I'm gonna stop recording later and just gonna talk to you for 4 more hours. So, I want to name and just put some labels on a couple things you said too, so that I can be sure that I drop some continuing reading because teachers are nerds, right? So we want to like read more things. So a couple things you said that I just want to tag to some literature, like you were talking about, very simple like the explicit instruction, but also walking through the stations, like great trauma informed practice, right? So we're decreasing the student's anxiety by being explicit in the instruction. You also mentioned when you were working with one of your mentee teachers that, understanding by design, like universal design for learning, when you were saying, okay, if it's a multilingual learner, which is our whole population, like most of our teachers are teaching students who are learning in their L2 or L3 and doing just like phenomenal things. So like you said, just put it in both language. Like if it's not an assessment situation, yeah, we have a cat up in here.
Yes.
Love it. Hey. So, putting it in both languages, adding an image if you want, right? So great reference to universal design for learning there. So loved it. Just wanted to mention that. And I'll also say, you were talking about having them reflect with us. There's a great book by a woman named Dr. Robin Jackson, and I'll link this into the show notes too, called Never Work Harder Than Your Students. And just that line, like, I'm like, am I ever doing something that they could be doing?
Yes.
Like autonomy, choice, belonging, which are the 3 components of motivation, right?
And we
so
want to because we're fixers. Like teachers are fixers. Like at the end of the day, I've had to have that conversation. I'm going to get that book because I want to read it now.
So good. Like I feel like every time someone says something like, I'm tired, I'm like, you're doing too much. Give it to your students. Give it to your students, right? Like give it to your students. Okay, as we begin to wrap up, I'm going to ask you, I have 5 questions, okay? And so I'm going to go through, and you tell me, and it'll be awesome, and I'm very excited. Okay, so we have a series on our socials called Word of the Week, being a multilingual community. It can be any word. It can be in Spanish, it can be in English, it can be in Greek, whatever you like. Any word that you love in any language. What comes to mind to you?
Whew, that's a hard one.
I
That
know,
is,
because there's a lot of words and you're an ELA teacher.
I know. I wanted it to be like super special, but this is gonna be a basic word. I'm sorry. It's just been like a core word for me lately, and it's gratitude. I know that
Mm,
sounds like
preach.
repeated over
Girl,
and over.
we'll take it. We'll take
Um,
it.
yeah, it's just gratitude, especially in the classroom. Gratitude for the humans in your classroom. I just think of, and I'm not trying to get dark, but I think of how school shootings have become normalized, how kids just go through a lot. Like kids
They go
just go
through a lot.
through a lot. And I know like it's different depending on like what country you're in, but specifically here in the US, like there's just so much going on, and my heart bleeds for kids who don't feel like they have a place in the world, who feel like their lives are just so chaotic, they don't know how to make things better, who feel like school is pointless, and I get all that. I get that too, to an extent, but I just think like as teachers, if we can just like show them we're grateful for them truly,
Mm,
and even like if you're thinking outside the classroom now, something I've learned truly over the last, I'd say, 5 years of my life is the happier, the more grateful, the more fulfilled you are outside of the classroom, because teacher is only one part of your identity. And the more
mm,
you are all of these things, but especially grateful outside of the classroom, the happier, the better you're going to be as a teacher for your students
mm,
inside the classroom. So
mhm.
I'm going to keep that as the word, as basic as
Ooh,
it may sound.
girl, I can see the quote card already. Gratitude. Hashtag gratitude. But you went deep, and I loved it. Okay, I know you like music. I know we are, ladies and gentlemen. I'm from Texas. Simply Anna P is from Florida. Now moved up to different South state. Um, what's that song you like? Like when you're like, I need to get moving. I need to get hyped up. What's your teacher hype song?
I am a Latina, so and Miami is home for me, even though I don't live there anymore. But it's gonna definitely be a Bad Bunny song, probably the entire album. And most recently, when we're recording this, I still have his latest album on repeat. So any song from Debí Tirar Más Fotos is gonna probably be
Oh,
playing as like a hype song. I
did
will
I
literally
see
put
you?
that
Like,
on
did you
blast.
get dressed up and watch the? Did I see a
I
post on
did.
that?
Oh my gosh, it's such a sad like it's a sad and happy story. My dog of 12 years, I've had him since he was a puppy. He got diagnosed with cancer earlier this year in 2025, and we've had a few scares along the way, the anticipatory grief, not knowing when the end is truly coming, but
Mm,
having incidents where we think it's coming. One of those
yeah.
incidents happened right before my fiance and I were supposed to go fly out to Puerto Rico to see Bad Bunny in concert for his residency, and I canceled, because I wanted to be with Monty. So we ended up just like decorating the house, and we watched it because he live streamed it because he's so
That was
amazing. He
so.
like live
That
streamed
was
it
so
for free for
amazing.
the world
That
to
was so
see.
amazing.
And obviously, Bad Bunny will never know what that meant to me in the moment that I was going through in my life, but it meant the world to me. So
You don't
yeah,
know, girl. He might be subscribed to this
yeah, he
podcast.
might be
And you know
listening. Like
what?
we don't
Benito escucha, nos encanta. Muchas gracias por el stream.
know. So Bad Bunny all the way, Bad Bunny to the world. Y'all can catch him at the Super Bowl. Oh well, this will be after, but
Yes. Oh my God. I know. I love all this. Okay. All right. The book you most like to reread and why?
Hmm. Oh, I'm trying to pick between like a YA because I'm an English teacher and like a self-development
The
book.
one that popped in your head. You get it. Whatever.
I'm gonna say The Slight Edge. I
Ooh.
have no idea who wrote it at the current time. I did not like
Yeah.
things to pick up
Okay.
right now. You
Like,
can
Edge,
put
we'll
it
find
in the
it.
show notes. But yeah, The Slight Edge. It's like a self-development book. If I were to like summarize it in one sentence, it's honestly just um, going going the extra mile or becoming a better version, like 1% better version of yourself day in and day out, doesn't take as much as one would think. It's literally just like the same, like how easy it is to not do something is usually how easy it is to do the thing. We just have to be
Oof.
willing to like, go over that like slight edge. So that book, I've reread it, re-highlighted it time and time again. But because I'm an ELA teacher, I know you said one, but I have to mention The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo is one of my favorite. It's a novel in verse. It's like something.
Two books I haven't read,
Oh,
Simply and a
it's
Few.
oh my goodness. It was one of the first novels in verse that I read, and I was just
Ooh.
blown away. She is truly a poet, and she's done spoken word poetry before, the novels and things. It's just beautiful. And especially, for your audience listening, multilingual learners, if you have in your classroom, like they gravitate towards this book. A lot of them love this book. Obviously one for the ladies more than anything, but it's just a really great book.
Oh my gosh, I can't. I'm like already thinking like when I'm going back over our conversation, like, oh, so many great things. Okay, now we mentioned this a little bit, like we've touched around some things about like giving ourselves grace, get as we try new things, as we try stations, whatever. But like, okay, you had to give, I know I'm being like one piece of it to yourself as a first year teacher. What
Mhm.
would you
I'd honestly repeat kind of like what I said earlier. When you decide to look in that mirror and like decide to be better overall, live a better life outside of the classroom, be more joyful, happier, all the things outside of the classroom. When you decide to like truly work in your internal, you're going to be a better teacher for
Mm,
many reasons. Number one, first year, second year, third year teacher, same thing. I would, you guys should have learned how to write an essay back. So go ahead and write an essay, and then get the essay back, and the thing was terrible. And I was sitting there like, and how do I teach him how to write this essay? So that's number one, just like the constant assuming or the getting upset so easily. And I was just very emotionally dysregulated, and you have to, like you said, have grace with yourself. You usually were like what, 20, 22 or younger when we start teaching, like we're still young. But so a lot of that is just like internal, like emotional growth, maturity, all those things, but also like deciding to like live a life and be the person that I wanted my kids to be. Like if you
mm,
want your kids to be resilient and disciplined and strong and communicative and all the things, like I wasn't being any of those things in my personal life when I was 21 years old, 22 years old, 23 years old. Like I was just a hot mess. But I also almost didn't graduate high school. So I understand like a certain kind of student. And I
yeah.
think it made me a better teacher in a lot of ways. But in other ways, I had a lot of growing up to do. And I think it truly just goes all back to the internal. But alongside that, kind of like on the flip side of that, is not letting the job take everything from you. I would be
Mm,
I'll never forget, my car was like the last car at school because I would stay trying to grade every single thing. And by the time I left, like no one was there, and I still only have a dent in my grade book. Like I just had no life outside. I almost
oh,
lost friends because I like was just always tired, always trying to do something for the job, always trying to, do XYZ, always just trying to do too much. And there's a
mm,
difference between doing the most with like razzle dazzly things and like just doing too much as far as like letting it like drain you, saying yes to everything. And it's just like learning how to, again, that's an internal, it's all the internal work. Boundaries, learning emotional regulation,
mm.
learning how to seek joy outside your profession and your career, because a teacher is not your whole identity. Like it would be a mixed bag of all those things, but that all goes back to just that internal work. The faster you can do the internal work, the happier you'll be as a teacher.
Y'all already know. Y'all are thinking, how do I grade less? That's gonna be our, we're gonna loop back in a few months with Simply NFP, but y'all go on her page because she has a million phenomenal suggestions for you about grading less, grading more effectively. So before I ask you to share your socials and share your website so people can find you on the interwebs and find all your great things, go to motivational quote whenever you're like, I need a little oomph.
I think it's changed over time. Can I please share both of them?
I would say, listen, I don't actually follow the rules. Give me 12
Okay.
quotes.
I'm not a great rule follower either. But the first quote is the one that I used to have even hanged up in my classroom in various ways over the years that I taught, was one by Marianne Williamson. And again, sometimes I don't know if these are actual the correct quote credits,
Yeah,
because
we'll check it out. No
let me
worries.
know. But it's the one that says, um, it is our light, not our darkness, that we fear most. I'm butchering it a little bit, but like it's that one that goes into we ask ourselves, who am I to be beautiful, talented, gorgeous, smart, all those things. Like, actually, who are you not to be? Like, stop playing small. So it's that quote that I used to, it's still one of my favorite quotes. But then most recently,
Dropping the mic, guys.
but then most recently, it's I don't know who said this, but smooth seas do not a skillful sailor make. Uh,
Mm.
and that's kind of like part of being comfortable in the uncomfortable and just like about growing. And I think that's been kind of like a theme here.
Oh, there's so much, so many. I know that, and that you're an ELA teacher, so English language arts teacher. Y'all for our outside of the country folks, outside of the U.S. folks. I'm outside of the U.S. I'm in Lima, Peru. But I love themes. My brain is thinking about the concepts and the themes from our conversation. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. So okay, tell us. So obviously your Instagram is at Simply Anna P. Is that your website too? Is that where people find you on the internet?
Yeah, so on Instagram and TikTok, I do have a Facebook. I almost never use it. It's literally just reposts. I don't even do them. They're automatic, but it's simply.anna.p on both of those. And then my website, simplyannap.com. And then I linked a few freebies for you guys, including a
Yeah.
stations bank. So if you're like, I want to do stations, I don't know where to start, I have a bank of over 25 different options and like the descriptions of like what you could ask students to do. And then I also linked, this is just a short story that I used to have to, I think it was one of the first times I ran station, no, not one of the first times, but a popular time. There is a short story that is used in the US a lot called The Most Dangerous Game. So I don't know if your international
Mm.
teachers have seen it or used it, but I do know it's just very popular. So even if you don't use it, if you wanted to see how a form of digital stations is laid out, like if you wanted to give students individual digital stations, which just means like a series of different types of tasks, I left that one there for you too. And then I also have a full masterclass with one of my ELA teacher besties on how to run all the things that is there and learning more.
Oh my gosh, I am so thankful. Y'all, again, we will drop those show notes. If you are watching on YouTube, they'll be in the descriptions. And then again, we will have a place where you can get all of those amazing links. So basically, you got more nerd homework and you're very happy about it. And we are so thankful, and sharing is caring. So I knew it would be great to talk to you. I am so thrilled. And thank you so much, Anna. We're so happy that you were able to come on the show. And Team Metacognition, yours and nerdiness, signing off. Thank you. Welcome.
That's our show, team. Thanks for listening, and thanks for all you do for your staff, students, and crew. Be sure to follow the show for future conversations and share this episode with someone else who values deep thinking.